Hello, Simon Gawesworth from Rio Products and Farbank here, talking to you today about our core trout lines, our best-selling trout lines that we've ever made, what is called the Rio Grand and what is called the Rio Gold. Now they're totally different tapers, they're both trout lines, they do different things. Why would you choose one over the other? Well, let's have a little look. The Rio Gold is your general purpose line. If you just want a line that's kind of going to throw dry flies and nymphs, it's going to work for decent casters, good casters, novices. It's going to work on medium action rods and fast action rods. It's going to throw streamers and dry flies and lures and all that kind of stuff. You just want to go to all-round line, then the Rio Gold is probably your line of choice on that. If, however, you want a line with a little bit more load weight, maybe you've got a stiff action rod, maybe you're a beginner just trying to find out how to start fly fishing and you need a bit more line weight, or maybe just you're not a great caster and you need a little bit more help in your casting, then the Rio Grand is going to give you that because it's a little bit heavier for the same weight as the Gold. 5 weight's a little bit heavier on the Grand than a 5-weight Gold. And that heavier line will help load a rod, and also it's got a shorter head, so you don't need to cast with as much line out before you shoot it. So those are our two core trout lines. As I said, they're our best-selling lines. I would pick one of those and recommend one of those to pretty well anybody who's fishing, depending on what your situations are. Now within those lines, both of those lines are available in 3 different families, 3 different tiers, all a different price point, and you might wonder why, what am I getting? Well, let's kind of tell you exactly what we've got here. Our top of the range, premium, beautiful, best line of all is what's called the Elite Series. Now the Elite Series is usually identified by a black box here. The Elite Series has a low stretch core fly line. That's a huge plus when you're setting the hook or when you're fighting a fish. You don't want a line that stretches and is bungeeing around and you're losing all the sensitivity and control. You want a low stretch line. So the Elite Series is a low stretch line. This line also has a high floating tip, what we call a max float tip. It's printed on there so you can have identification, easy ID we call it, so you can look at the line and read it and tells you what it is. And it's got welded loops on both ends. And as you'll see on this coil, the line actually is a 3-color line. We call that Surefire. And what that means is the front end is your casting section. The yellow in the middle here, that's your prime loading area. And the gray is your running line. So that is what an Elite line will give you. If you want to go down to the next tier of line, the next tier is called the Premier tier. And this is the Premier tier. It doesn't have that black box, a bit more of a bluey color box as the identifier. It also has this welded loops on both ends. It also has our slick cast, super slick coating technology, so it shoots like a snake and goes a long way very easily. Highly durable line. It's printed so you can identify it. It's got welded loops on both ends, as I said. It's got that high floating tip. It's only 2 colors. That's one of the things that factor into the price of the line and the quality of the line. In this case, the Gold has this olive color front end, which is the head. And it has this gold color running line. So you have an identifier of where the head and the running line is. And that's pretty good if you're cast out and you're making a few false casts. You want to know when to make your final cast and shoot it out there. Basically, when you're holding the yellow, you let her go. And then the third series I'd like to show you is the Avid Series. It's in this gray color box. That's your identifier. And it's kind of our lower price point line that still retains the best technologies. It still has slick cast. So it's, again, very, very slick, very durable, very long-lasting line. It has welded loops on both ends so you can attach your leader and back into it without any problems. But that's really where all the fancy stuff goes. It's not printed, so you can't identify it if you lose your sticky label. It doesn't have a high floating tip, and it's a single color, as you can see here. So it's a little bit more difficult to identify where the correct point to load the line is. So both of those trout lines are available in those 3 technologies, as I said, those 3 tiers. So pick the tier that you want. Remember, the Elite Series has that low stretch and that's that triple color Surefire, which is probably your most easy way of determining where your line is load. The Premier Series doesn't have the low stretch core, still has slick cast, still a great line, 2 colors, easy to see where the head and running line is. And then the Avid Series, good entry level line, price point, does have welded loops, which is good for tying your leaders on and your backing on, but not much more than that. And those are your 3 tiers. And one thing, while the lines may differ in their technology and things, one thing they all have in common now is they're all put on with our new compostable spool. We want to get away from plastics as much as possible, and so we've just started moving all our fly lines onto these cardboard compostable spools that you can just chuck in there. I don't know, your compost heap. If you really had to and wanted to, you could bury them and they're just going to rot and degrade. They're just made of old compressed newspapers that are compressed into the shape of our spools. They're made of old recyclable stuff. They are recyclable, they're compostable, so they're the best spool lines out there for the environment. So all of the lines you'll find on those spools. And you can get any of these lines at any of these technologies in your local Sportfish shop or at sportfish.co.uk.